Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Everyday EDC. My name is Tyler, and today we have another review for you. This review is going to be of the Artisan Cutlery Arroyo. Alright, so the review of the Artisan Cutlery Arroyo. Let's get it started. These Micarta handles on this Arroyo, whatever, feel so good. Oh my gosh, these actually feel like a fabric. It's, I can compare it to, this actually feels pretty textured. This is the feldspar in Micarta, and it makes sense because they're made by the same manufacturer, but this one's a little bit smoother, but it still has some good texturing. This texturing, it almost feels like you can feel the strands popping out of it, and there's something so nice about it. It makes it soft yet durable, and it's just like, you kind of want to cuddle up with it, and maybe... So, we have this trailing point blade. This blade is made of AR RPM 9, which is basically a powder form of 9CR18 MOV. Now, I was going to try to get you some spec comparisons and but there's not enough information on the AR RPM 9 to really do anything with. But this is a gorgeous looking, almost like a scimitar style blade with the Artisan Cutlery logo right there. And then this is kind of like, whatever. There's billboarding on this side. We have designed by Dirk Pinkerton, aka designed by Dirk Pinkerton, fingerprint. His little logo right there, which is actually a pretty cool looking logo. We have the serial number. Come on. The serial number, the blade steel, and then made in China. It's a little much, like you didn't need to do all that, but whatever. On the blade itself, we have, I'm not going to call this jimping because there's a solid bar. This is the first time I've really experienced this. There's a solid bar of the blade spine going right through, and all they did was kind of scallop the sides. Pretty cool. When I noticed it, I'm like, no wonder it feels good. It like locks you in, but you still feel like there's nothing like poking on your finger. Pretty cool. We have a deep carry pocket clip that is ambidextrous. I always do that. It's ambidextrous on both sides. You guys freaking get it, It can be a righty or lefty, despite the fact that the liner lock is basically meant for right-handed people. But the pocket clip is recessed. Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is gorgeous. Look at this. Look at this. Hold on. You ready? Look at that. Oh, that is so nice. And they even recessed the screw heads, so it looks great. Right now, you got a perfect view of the lanyard. It's a lanyard bead. Once again, fantastic. Do that with every knife. I love it. That's so cool. Oh, man, that is awesome. So we have a really deep, goofy-looking sharpening choil right there, so that's cool, I guess. I mean, that's one of my complaints about the knife, is the flipper tab plus the sharpening choil look kind of goofy. I haven't tried to sharpen it yet, so maybe it plays a huge factor then, as far as just the shape and the function, but yeah. So these pivots, they look to be T8. Every other screw is a T6 screw on here. Not a big deal. Let's see, what are we missing before we kind of jump ahead? These liners, let's see if we can go into this, and I have a plan so you guys can actually see these. There you go. You can see those liners are all milled on the show side. They're not milled on the lock bar side. Not the lock bar, the liner lock side. But, there you go. There you go again. Alright. So it's nice, and this thing's ultra light. The one cool thing about this feels so flat, but it's wide, so in your hand, it actually fills out your hand really well. Ergonomically, yeah, you don't have too many options, even though it doesn't force your hand into any particular location. But I can tell you, this feels really good. This feels good. It's a good feeling in-hand knife. And I think it has to do with how wide these scales are. Now, these scales aren't necessarily insanely wide. Let's bring out the feldspar again. The feldspar is not much more narrow in some parts, but it's contoured. So the flatness of this just gives it a unique feel. And where this fuller is coming down in this micarta is like almost the perfect spot for my fingertips to land, and you're locked in. Oh, man. Now, I'm not going to say excellent ergos. This isn't like shaman style ergos, but this is really good ergos. This is pretty darn good ergos. let's talk about the action here for a second. So this thing's on ceramic ball bearings. So naturally, if you look at it, it's just going to have pretty stellar action. The unique part about that is, though, is watch this. You kind of wiggle it on down. It's not a drop shut, but the blade is not heavy. And we'll get into that when I start doing the specs. I'm going to talk a lot about this blade. That's what I don't necessarily like, the trailing point. I'm not a trailing point style guy, but there is something about this that this blade is just stupid slicey. So, yeah. Oh, man. We'll get into that. Let's check the blade centering. I got this off of Reddit, but it was basically a brand new knife. So this blade's perfectly centered. The action's good. There's no back and forth. There's no up and down. It's what you would expect from Artisan Cutlery. I mean, I haven't... This is actually, believe it or not, my first Artisan Cutlery that I've held in hand, to my knowledge. But I love it. Oh, man. I actually immediately got online and I looked up, I want to say the Centauri. So let's jump into some specs of this mean little slicer. Oh, my goodness. This thing is a mean, lean fighting machine for sure. You guys are having trouble seeing that, aren't you? Let's see here. Yeah, you guys really can't see that. I wonder if I can lift this up. So it's coming in at 3.33 ounces. Let me see if I can... There you go. If I steady it. There it is. Yes, I know I'm holding a scale in the air. I'm trying to keep as steady as possible, showing 331. But on the ground, it's showing 333, which is, it feels lighter than it actually shows on the scale. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. This thing feels like air. It's just, I think it's because it's so flat that it feels like it's just going to parachute on down. Let's get these overall lengths. So, the overall length of this guy is coming in at just about 7.5 inches. The blade length is coming in at between 3 1/4 and 3.5. We'll call it 3 1/3. And the cutting edge, due to that finger choil, is coming in right at about 3 1/4. So it's going to be one of those knives that's maybe a medium to large size knife. You know, if you were to rewind maybe like 5 years, this is a large size knife for most people, but I think this is turning into the medium size of knives. This is where this blade is going to shine. This blade stock coming in at 105 thousandths, 106, but you guys know what I'm talking about. The behind the edge, I'm so excited to do this. This is showing 20 thousandths. But let's go up here. I expected less with this full flat grind. Yeah, it's showing about 20 thousandths behind the edge. The handle thickness is coming in at a very narrow 0.43, or about, we'll call it, what would that be called? It's less than half an inch. Yeah, sure. Less than half an inch. It's 1/10 less than half an inch. Do that math. So the overall height in your pocket is going to be coming in at a 1.2 inches. So it's a very, very narrow knife by comparison of, say, the Spyderco family. So what I wanted to talk about with this blade prior to going into some size comparisons, the reason I thought this was going to be actually more slim is this full flat grind with this very narrow blade stock. So this flat grind must be very, very non-aggressive to come down. But despite not being a Savivi hollow grind 14 thousandths behind the edge, this is about 20 thousandths. And I can tell you this is the best slicing knife that I've ever felt in my life. And that is not an exaggeration. There is something about this. And I was taking this, you guys know I feed my tortoise, so I cut up a head of lettuce. That's how I stab my finger with that freaking Megatherium. But I cut up a head of lettuce and it just glides through, and that's the blade geometry more so than the actual sharpness of the blade, which lends you to believe and listen to the fact that blade geometry plays a stupidly huge role in sliciness. It's not just how sharp you can get this. This traveled through so smooth. Oh my gosh, so smooth. We'll do some cuts at the end of this video. Now let's jump into some size comparisons. Here is your Rat Model 1 and your Rat Model 2. As you can see, much smaller than your Rat Model 1. Actually, slightly longer than your Rat Model 2, but not much, despite looking much larger. Now, just for your guys' references, the reason I do so many size comparisons if you're new to the channel is because some of you might have one of these knives, but you don't have, say, one or two of the knives. And so if I choose one or two and not some of these conventional knives that most people have seen, you might not get a good size reference here. The whole point of this is so you guys actually do have something to reference off of, and you can go back and say, okay, that's how much I expect. We can read specs all day, and I can't tell you how many knives I've read the specs of. I get it in hand, I'm like, what the frick is this? That is way different than what I was expecting. So here is your mini feldspar. It is actually just about the same length, maybe slightly longer than your mini, and you can see much shorter than your large. It's deceivingly short thanks to that trailing point giving you immense amounts of actual cutting edge. Here is your Civivi Durus and your Civivi Brigand. So as you can see, slightly smaller than the Brigand, slightly larger than your Durus. And last but not least, your Spyderco Sandwich. We have your Para 3 and your Spyderco Shaman. So much smaller than your Shaman, but your Shaman's a pretty large knife. But the unique part, and we'll try to get to that after this, is that even though it's about the same size as your Para 3, maybe slightly shorter, look at the blade lengths on this guy. Oh my goodness. So much more blade length and slicing ratio, which leads even more into the fact that this knife is just such an incredible slicer. Just so incredible. Alright, so just as a quick recap, this is a AR RPM 9 blade with a satin finish and a trailing point with a flat grind coming down to where a pretty narrow edge there. I didn't do this, but this tip is pretty dainty. I mean, it is not... I mean, I think my Brigand has a pretty dainty tip, and this thing's probably more dainty than the Brigand. So don't be prying with this guy. This guy's a slicer, not a pryer. We have Micarta scales. This also comes in G10 on Blade HQ, but I've noticed on White Mountain knives it comes in acrylic, which is totally unique. I don't know what that feels like. I'm guessing kind of like a sticky plastic feel or something like that. Maybe a super smooth plasticky feel. Not sure. And the acrylic versions are coming in at $45. The Micarta version comes in at $65. This has a deep carry pocket clip, which is ambidextrous, a T8 with T6 body screws and T6 around the the pocket clip. This does have a lanyard hole, but it is in the form of a bead next to the standoffs, which is fantastic, probably my favorite. It has milling on the inside of the show side scale. It is a stainless steel liner lock on ceramic ball bearings. Fantastic. Fantastic. So what do we like about this knife? First and foremost, this thing is the most incredible slicing machine that you've ever felt in your life. If there's ever been a knife that you think is a great slicer, try this and tell me if this is not as good, because I'm telling you, this thing just slices like a frickin' pro. And speaking of that, I mean, did you guys even hear that sound? Look at that. Frickin' cut right through my shit. Oops. Yeah. Just so awesome of a slicer, guys. Just so awesome. That didn't prove any point whatsoever, you know? But if there's anything that I can brag about this knife, it's that the sliceability, which is a new word, the sliceability and the sliciness, which are both probably new adjectives to just every EDC channel. This thing has it, and let's get a 10 on the blade for everything but the aesthetics. I'm not a huge fan of the trailing point, but the AR RPM 9 relative to the price, the slicing factor, the blade geometry is just so good. Second thing I really like about this knife is the micarta. The micarta in this handle is just like almost just fabric-y. It feels just unique and very cool. So I really like that about this. The action on these ceramic ball bearings, just really good. And this is not clean. I could probably clean this out and make it 10 times better. But it's really good. The recessed pocket clip, is probably my second favorite about this, because we see so many of these not recess their pocket clips, and I just appreciate that. I appreciate the thought. Some people don't like this cutout. Well, you know what? I will take that cutout each and every day if you're going to recess my pocket clip. So please and thank you. What are my dislikes? I go back to the blade. I really don't like the trailing point, but that's a pure subjective preference. That's not objectively looking at this knife. It's just a dislike from me personally, not as a reviewer. I'm not a huge fan of the trailing point, but I get it because once you slice with it, the trailing point makes sense. The amount of actual cutting edge there is just insane. And the last thing I really don't like about this knife is the flipper tab. You know, in this position, it's not a big deal, but it does stick out quite a bit. But it just looks kind of stupid. I mean, it's kind of a stupid looking flipper tab. Now, if you can get past that and you don't see it, which if you're looking at this knife, you really don't until you're like, oh yeah, look at that. It's not a huge deal. So for $65, can I recommend this knife? Yes. Hell yes. This thing is awesome, especially if you like that trailing point. You are going to love the Artisan Cutlery Arroyo. Is this a forever knife for me? Probably not, and that's not a discredit to the knife. It's just that I don't have room in my collection for it. If I could keep every knife similar to this, I totally would. I can definitely recommend this knife. I can definitely recommend the price, everything. I think it's actually cheap for what it should be, except for the fact that it's AR RPM 9, which is kind of the new budget powder form steel. And it's just a fantastic knife. My name is Tyler. This is the Artisan Cutlery Arroyo, and this thing kills it. Absolutely kills it. Beast mode. Everyday EDC. Have a great day. I was going to try to do a really cool sign-off and totally failed. So my name's Tyler. This is Everyday EDC. You guys stay sharp. Stay safe. Have a great freaking day, guys. Thanks for watching.